I'm Tara Dean, 28 years old. Just 3 hours ago, I sat in a courtroom watching my own parents try to convince a judge that I was too irresponsible to manage my own money. They wanted everything: my bank accounts, my car, even the condo I had paid for entirely on my own. Their attorney stood there with a confident smile, like the outcome had already been decided. Then the judge started reviewing my financial records. His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Stop this proceeding immediately," he said sharply. "Call security." And just like that, everything shifted. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe, but only if you truly believe that unchecked greed can destroy trust, relationships, and even families. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what the temperature is like there right now. This is a fictional story created with the support of artificial intelligence for educational and entertainment purposes. I hope it not only keeps you engaged, but also gives you something meaningful to reflect on. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was 7 years old when my mother decided I was too much trouble. "Tara will stay with your grandparents for a while," she announced one morning, as if she were talking about sending a package. Not her daughter. My small suitcase was already waiting by the door. No explanation, no timeline. Just a quick hug that smelled like expensive perfume and impatience. Then she walked out. I remember standing there, watching her drive away in her sleek black sports car, not even looking back. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of her new life. My grandparents lived on a massive estate in Westchester County, New York. 12 acres of perfectly maintained gardens, towering oak trees, and a mansion that looked like it belonged in a history book. Marble floors, antique chandeliers, paintings worth more than most people's homes. But for me, it became the only place that ever felt safe. My grandmother, Margaret Holloway, ran the house with absolute precision. Breakfast at exactly 7, study hours after school, violin practice every Wednesday. She had rules for everything. "How you sit reflects who you are," she would say, adjusting my posture at the dinner table. "A strong spine builds a strong character." My grandfather, Arthur Holloway, was quieter but far more influential than anyone realized. On Sunday mornings, over pancakes, he taught me about money, not just how to spend it, but how to understand it. "Money is a tool, Tara," he would say, sliding charts and notes across the table. "If you don't control it, it will control you." Those lessons stayed with me. My parents, they showed up occasionally: birthdays, holidays, always with expensive gifts and stories about their busy lives. They'd sweep in like a storm and disappear just as quickly. There was always somewhere else they needed to be. Another party, another deal, another person more important than me. By the time I turned 12, I stopped waiting for them to come back, because I finally understood something that changed everything. Home isn't where you're told you belong, it's where someone actually wants you to stay. What she never said out loud was that sending me away meant she would see me even less. The academy she chose, Blackwood Preparatory in Massachusetts, was exactly what people imagined when they thought of elite education. Immaculate halls, small classes, teachers who knew your name and your future plans. But beneath all that perfection was something familiar: distance. Most of the girls there came from families just like mine, wealthy, accomplished, and emotionally absent. I learned quickly that focusing on my studies was easier than trying to build friendships that would never last. Numbers made sense. Equations had logic. Results followed effort. Unlike people. During school breaks, while others traveled to luxury resorts or returned to warm homes, I went back to my grandparents' estate in Westchester. My grandmother, Margaret Holloway, continued her lessons at the dinner table, correcting every small detail of posture and manners. My grandfather, Arthur Holloway, taught me something far more valuable. He showed me how money moved. Before I was even old enough to drive, I understood real estate portfolios, dividend income, and long-term investments. Knowledge gives you control, he told me one evening, sliding a set of financial reports across the table. But using that knowledge wisely gives you freedom. Those words stayed with me. My parents became even more distant during those years. Sometimes my mother would call on my birthday. Sometimes she would forget. Holiday cards arrived late, filled with generic messages that felt like they were written for someone she barely knew. By the time I turned 17, I graduated as valedictorian. I earned a full scholarship to Harvard. My mother showed up to the ceremony late, walking in with oversized sunglasses and a polished smile. She hugged me for the cameras, her voice bright and proud. "I always knew you would do something extraordinary, Tara." I smiled back, but inside I felt nothing, because I knew the truth. I had built everything on my own. Harvard changed me in ways I didn't expect. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for approval that would never come. I began to understand who I was without constantly looking over my shoulder. Studying finance and economics felt natural, almost inevitable. Everything my grandfather had taught me finally connected. I worked harder than ever. Graduating with top honors wasn't just an achievement. It was proof that I didn't need anyone else to define my worth. My professors noticed. They opened doors to internships and opportunities that most students could only dream of. Meanwhile, my mother faded even further into the background. Birthday calls turned into short text messages. Gifts arrived through assistants. By then, her absence no longer hurt. It simply confirmed what I had known for years. The gifts she sent always looked perfect on the outside. Designer labels, expensive packaging, everything polished and distant. When I graduated summa cum laude, she didn't even come. Instead, a bouquet arrived with a short note. "Congratulations. So proud." The handwriting wasn't hers. It belonged to her assistant. Strangely, I didn't feel hurt anymore. Her absence no longer felt like rejection. It felt like freedom. 3 days after graduation, I started working at Halstead Capital, one of the most competitive financial firms in Chicago. I earned that position through years of discipline, strong academic results, and relentless preparation. My grandfather Arthur had taught me something most people overlooked. Never walk into a room unprepared. So I didn't just study the company. I studied their recent deals, their competitors, their long-term strategies. By the time I sat down for the interview, I understood their business almost as well as they did. Within 6 months, I was managing portfolios for clients whose monthly spending exceeded what most people earned in a year. It felt natural. Recognizing patterns, evaluating risk, making calculated decisions. These were not new skills. They were lessons I had been absorbing since childhood. At 24, I bought my first apartment. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, but every dollar came from my own salary and bonuses. When I signed the paperwork, I felt something I had never experienced before. Ownership, not just of property, but of my life. My mother called 3 weeks later. Her voice carried that familiar tone. Soft, but probing. "That's wonderful. Tara, your own place already. It must have been expensive. How did you manage the down payment? Did Arthur leave something aside for you?" I almost smiled. "I worked for it," I said calmly. "That's how—" She laughed lightly, as if brushing it off. "Of course. I just think at your age, these decisions can be overwhelming. Maybe I should review the documents. just to be sure everything is in order. That was the first moment I noticed it. Not concern, not curiosity, interest. And it wasn't the kind that comes from love. A few months later, my grandmother Margaret passed away. The funeral took place on a cold October morning under a gray sky that felt heavy with silence. The chapel was filled with people from high society, individuals who had admired her for decades. They spoke about her elegance, her charity work, her legacy, but none of them truly understood what she had given me. She had raised me to stand on my own. Everything my grandmother had taught me, every correction, every strict rule about dignity and composure, had been preparation, not for comfort, but for a world that would constantly test my strength. My grandfather Arthur did not last long without her. The doctors called it heart failure. I called it something else. After nearly 5 decades together. Some bonds do not break quietly. 6 months later, he was gone too. The reading of their will took place at Hensley and Burke, the same law firm they had trusted for over 30 years. I arrived early. My mother arrived 20 minutes late, dressed in black designer clothing, her expression carefully arranged into something that looked like grief. She had spent more time at their funerals than she had with them in years. The attorney, Mr. Caldwell, began reading in a calm, measured tone. The majority of the estate, including all properties, investment portfolios, and business interests, is to be transferred directly to our granddaughter, Tara Dean Holloway, with the condition that all assets remain solely under her control. Silence filled the room. Even the ticking of the antique clock sounded too loud. "I'm sorry," my mother said slowly. "Could you repeat that?" He did, word for word. There was no misunderstanding. They had left me everything. The estate in Westchester, the penthouse in Chicago, the coastal home in Maine, investment accounts I had never even tried to calculate, and controlling shares in multiple companies. My mother's face changed color in a way I had never seen before. "That can't be right," she said. "There must be some mistake. My parents would never do that. They believed in family structure." Mr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses. They were very clear in their reasoning. They believed Tara has demonstrated the maturity and capability to manage these responsibilities. He handed me a document. Inside was a private note from my grandparents. "Tara has shown more integrity and wisdom in her young life than most people show in a lifetime. She earned this through who she is." The meeting ended shortly after. My mother requested copies of everything, her voice tight, controlled, but barely hiding her anger. In the parking garage, she finally spoke. "This won't last. Tara, you are too young to handle something this big without guidance." I looked at her, really looked at her. There was no concern in her eyes, only resentment. "I'll be fine," I said quietly. "Grandfather prepared me for this." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "We'll see." For the next 18 months, she transformed into someone I almost didn't recognize. She called every week, sent thoughtful gifts, suggested trips so we could reconnect. Anyone watching would have believed she had become a devoted mother overnight. But I had learned something important. People rarely change without a reason. And when they do, it is usually not the reason they claim. The change in her behavior was not sudden. It was gradual, careful, almost calculated. At first, it sounded harmless. During one of our weekly calls, she asked gently, "Tara, have you thought about hiring a financial advisor, someone experienced with complex portfolios?" I stayed quiet. "I know people who specialize in inherited wealth," she continued. "It is very different from money you earn yourself." That was the first sign. The second came a few weeks later. "That apartment of yours is nice," she said casually, But do you really think it reflects your current position? You should be living somewhere more appropriate. I could help you find something better. Her tone was always soft, always supportive, but beneath it, there was something else. By the 15th month, she stopped hinting. You know, Tara, I have been thinking. It might be wise to put part of the inheritance under both our names, just for tax purposes. Estate planning can get complicated. There it was. Not concern, not guidance, control. I had spent years watching my grandparents navigate relationships, business, and power. I recognized manipulation when I saw it, but I had also learned something more important. Document everything. Every phone call, every suggestion, every subtle shift in her language went into a file. Dates, times, exact words. At the time, it felt excessive. Later, it would become invaluable. The moment everything became clear happened on a Tuesday morning in April. I walked into my apartment building lobby and saw her sitting comfortably beside the concierge, laughing as if she had been there 100 times before. Surprise, she said brightly. I was nearby and thought we could have lunch. Nothing about it felt spontaneous. The restaurant she chose was expensive, the reservation already made. She waited until the food arrived before bringing it up. I have been looking into your situation, she said, folding her hands neatly. And I think we need to have a serious conversation. I already knew where this was going. Inherited wealth comes with responsibilities, she continued. Responsibilities you are not fully prepared to handle alone. Taxes, investments, long-term planning. She paused, watching me carefully. I think it would be best if I helped manage things. We could create joint accounts, establish proper oversight, make sure everything is handled correctly. I didn't look up from my plate. Correctly, according to who? According to people who understand these matters. According to family. Family. The word felt hollow coming from her. I will think about it, I said calmly. I had already made my decision. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Not from her. She was too careful for that. It came from a law firm called Whitmore and Klein, specialists in family financial disputes. The language was formal, almost clinical, but the meaning was unmistakable. My mother was asking the court to declare me mentally unfit to manage my own assets. She wanted full legal control over everything I owned. I read the document again and again. Each time, it revealed something worse. This was not concern. This was strategy. The accusations in the petition were almost surreal. According to the documents, I was emotionally unstable, financially inexperienced, and easily influenced by others. I read those words slowly, trying to understand how anyone could twist reality so completely. The affidavits attached were even worse. Distant relatives I barely remembered claimed they were worried about me. Former classmates from Blackwood Preparatory described me as withdrawn and troubled. Even a former housekeeper alleged she had witnessed strange behavior during my childhood visits. None of it was true. Or rather, none of it was honest. Yes, I had been quiet as a child because I grew up in a house where I was treated like an obligation, not a daughter. Yes, I focused on my studies because achievement was the only thing anyone ever acknowledged. But when those details were rewritten in legal language, they became something else entirely. They painted me as someone incapable of managing her own life. The most damaging claim was the idea that I had manipulated my grandparents. According to my mother, I had isolated them, influenced their decisions, and turned them against her for financial gain. It was almost laughable. Anyone who knew Margaret and Arthur Holloway understood one thing clearly. They were not people anyone could manipulate. They made decisions based on years of observation, Not emotion, not pressure. But the court would not see that. The court would see a carefully constructed narrative. A concerned mother trying to protect her unstable daughter from herself. I needed help. I called our family attorney, Daniel Mercer. Immediately. I was expecting this. He said calmly after I explained everything. That stopped me. You were expecting this. So were your grandparents. He replied. I felt a chill run through me. What do you mean? They knew there was a possibility someone might challenge their decision. They prepared for it. Prepared. The word lingered in my mind. Come to my office this afternoon, he said. There are things you need to see. 3 hours later, I sat across from him, staring at a stack of documents I had never seen before. Medical evaluations confirming my grandparents' mental clarity up until their final days, psychological assessments verifying their full competency, detailed financial records showing years of careful, deliberate decision-making. This was not just a will, this was a defense. In real life. There are parents who treat their own children this way, putting money and control above love and trust. If you believe what they did was right, trying to take control of their child's assets, comment correct. But if you feel this kind of behavior is unfair and harmful, comment wrong. Your voice might help someone out there. Realize they're not alone. One folder stood out from the rest. It was thick, carefully organized, and labeled in clear handwriting, Tara Dean Holloway Character Assessment and Competency Documentation. Daniel Mercer slid it toward me. Your grandfather put this together over the last 5 years, he said. I opened it slowly. Inside were records I didn't even know existed. My transcripts from Harvard, performance reviews from Halstead Capital, detailed financial statements showing how I saved, invested, and managed every dollar. There were letters from professors, supervisors, even colleagues describing my discipline, judgment, and professionalism. Page after page. It told a story, not the one my mother had created. The truth. He knew this might happen, I said quietly. The realization settling in. Daniel nodded. Arthur Holloway planned for everything. This was not about favoritism. He built a case, evidence that his decision was based on who you are. At the very back of the folder, there was a letter, handwritten, dated 2 weeks before his death. My hands trembled slightly as I read it. If you are reading this, it means someone is trying to take from you what you have earned through your character. Do not let them. You are exactly who we raised you to be. Strong, capable, more than prepared to stand on your own. Use what we have given you. And remember, the best defense is often a good offense. I stared at the page for a long moment. Something inside me shifted. The fear that had been building since I received that legal notice faded. In its place was something sharper. Clarity. I looked up at Daniel. When do we start? He gave a small, knowing smile. We already have. The next 6 weeks were relentless. Every document was reviewed, organized, and cross-referenced. Every claim from my mother's petition was broken down and challenged. Witnesses were contacted and statements verified. It felt less like preparation and more like strategy for a battle. Her legal team is expecting you to break, Daniel said one evening as we worked late in his office overlooking the city lights. They think you will be overwhelmed, that you will settle just to make it stop. I shook my head, flipping through another set of documents. They don't know who raised me. We compiled testimony from people who actually knew me, professors who had seen my work ethic, colleagues who trusted me with millions, even the manager of my apartment building who could speak to how I handled my responsibilities. Every piece of evidence told the same story. I was not weak. I was not unfit. And I was definitely not someone who would walk away. "They are underestimating you," Daniel said. I closed the folder in front of me. "No," I replied calmly. "They are making a mistake." The deeper we went into the case, the more unsettling the truth became during the discovery phase. My mother's legal team submitted financial records to support their claim that I was reckless and incapable, but in doing so, they made a mistake. A serious one. Daniel spread several documents across the table and pointed to a series of transactions. "Look closely at these," he said. I leaned in. Transfers, account openings, credit applications, all listed under my name, but the dates did not make sense. "These are from when I was still in college," I said slowly. "Some of them from graduate school. I never opened these accounts." The realization came all at once. She used my identity. Daniel nodded, his expression dark. "For years," he added. "At least 6 that we can prove. Possibly longer." I picked up one of the documents, my hands tightening around the paper. This credit card was opened when I was 22. I was living in Boston that entire year. This application came from New York. The pattern was undeniable. My mother had been using my name, my information, my identity to open accounts and access money. And now, those same records were being used to argue that I was financially irresponsible. "Why would she submit this?" I asked. "Doesn't this expose her?" Daniel adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. Either her legal team did not examine the details carefully enough, or they believe no one else will. Neither possibility was reassuring. Over the next week, we documented everything, every unauthorized account, every forged signature, every transaction I had never approved. The evidence built quickly, clear, consistent, damaging. "She created the very pattern she is accusing you of," Daniel said. "And by submitting these records, she has handed us proof." There was a certain irony in that. She had tried to build a case against me. Instead, she had built one against herself. But what changed everything came from somewhere unexpected. While reviewing the witness list her legal team planned to present, one name caught my attention: Clara Whitmore, my grandmother Margaret's personal assistant for nearly 15 years. I sat up straight. "That's not right," I said. "She would never support this." Daniel looked at me carefully. "Are you sure I need to call her?" When Clara answered, her voice carried immediate relief. "Tara, I am so glad you reached out," she said. "I have been waiting for this." My heart tightened. "What do you mean I never agreed to testify for your mother?" she said firmly. "They contacted me, asked questions, but I told them the truth. Somehow. My name ended up on their witness list anyway. That was the moment I understood. This was not just manipulation. It was something far more calculated." Clara took a breath before continuing, her tone steady but careful. "They asked me about your grandparents' final years," she said. "I told them exactly what I knew. Margaret and Arthur were sharp until the very end. They made every decision with full awareness." I listened closely. "What else did you tell them?" "I told them about the precautions they took," she replied. "Regular medical evaluations to prove their mental clarity. Meetings with multiple attorneys. Months spent making sure their will could not be challenged." I felt a quiet sense of pride. That sounded exactly like them. Then she hesitated. "There is something else," she added. My chest tightened. "What is it?" "Your grandfather hired a private investigator," she said. For a moment, I could not speak. "A private investigator, yes. About 2 years before he passed. He suspected your mother was using your identity. He wanted proof." Everything inside me went still. And did he find it? I asked quietly. Clara did not hesitate. Yes. I closed my eyes briefly, letting that sink in. Do you still have his contact information? I have more than that, she said. I have copies of his full report. Arthur asked me to keep them safe, in case they were ever needed. A pause. I think this is that moment. 3 days later, I sat across from Daniel Mercer, reviewing the most detailed investigation I had ever seen. The report traced my mother's actions back nearly 8 years: identity theft, unauthorized accounts, forged documents, even attempts to gain control over finances belonging to elderly clients she had worked with in the past. It was not just manipulation, it was a pattern. This changes everything, Daniel said, his voice calm but decisive. I looked up. How? We are no longer just defending you, he replied. We now have grounds to go on the offensive. I hesitated. Would that make this personal? Daniel gave a slight smile. Tara, this was always personal. She made it that way the moment she tried to take everything from you. For the first time since this began. I felt something different. Not fear, not uncertainty, confidence. We had the truth. And the truth was stronger than anything she had built. The case was assigned to Judge Leonard Hayes, a man known for discipline and precision. He did not tolerate theatrics. He did not entertain manipulation, which made my mother's carefully crafted image of a grieving, concerned parent seem almost misplaced. For the first time, I realized something important. She was not just taking a risk. She was walking into a courtroom where the truth would finally matter. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, not because of the air, but because of the weight in the room. Every glance, every quiet whisper, every movement carried tension that pressed down on everyone present. My client is here out of genuine concern, my mother's attorney began, his voice smooth and practiced, carefully designed to sound compassionate. She believes her daughter is not fully prepared to manage a substantial inheritance responsibly. I kept my eyes on Judge Leonard Hayes. He did not react. No nod, no frown, just a steady, unreadable expression that told me one thing clearly. This was not a man who made decisions based on emotion. The attorney continued, building his narrative step by step. I had inherited millions. I had made questionable financial decisions. I had refused guidance from family. We are not asking to remove these assets, he said, only to ensure appropriate oversight for her protection. It sounded reasonable, careful, almost convincing. If I had not known the truth, I might have doubted myself for a moment. Then Daniel Mercer stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Your Honor, this is not a case about protection, he said clearly. This is a case about control. A subtle shift moved through the courtroom. My client has demonstrated consistent financial responsibility, he continued. But more importantly, the petitioner has engaged in a long pattern of fraudulent activity using her daughter's identity. That changed everything. Judge Hayes leaned forward slightly. Those are serious claims, he said. Daniel met his gaze without hesitation. We have extensive evidence, including documentation gathered by a private investigator hired by the deceased. For the first time, I saw my mother lose control, just for a second. Her face tightened. Her confidence flickered. The judge gave a single nod. Proceed. The first day unfolded exactly as Daniel had predicted. Their side called witnesses who barely knew me, old acquaintances who described me as quiet, reserved, difficult to connect with. Their words felt vague, rehearsed, lacking anything concrete. Then came their expert witness. A professor named Daniel Reeves took the stand, presenting himself with calm authority. Miss Holloway purchased a vehicle valued at $70,000 within 6 months of inheriting, he said. She also made large charitable donations and invested in volatile technology stocks. He paused, letting the implications settle. These decisions suggest a lack of emotional maturity in managing wealth. A few heads in the courtroom nodded slightly. It sounded convincing, until Daniel stood for cross-examination. "Did you research the vehicle she purchased?" he asked calmly. The professor hesitated. The amount seemed excessive. "It was a certified pre-owned electric vehicle," Daniel replied. "High safety rating, minimal depreciation, purchased after months of research. Does that suggest irresponsibility?" The professor shifted in his seat. "Not necessarily, and the donations, they were significant, to organizations focused on education and elder care." Daniel continued. "The same causes her grandparents supported for decades. Does continuing that tradition indicate poor judgment silence? And the investments you described as speculative. Did you examine the companies involved?" The professor did not answer immediately. By the time Daniel finished, the entire argument had unraveled. What had been presented as recklessness now looked like discipline. What had been framed as immaturity now appeared as strategy. Then my mother took the stand. She looked composed, almost gentle. Her voice softened as she spoke. "I am concerned about my daughter," she said. Her tone carefully measured. "She has become distant, defensive. She refuses help." She paused, dabbing lightly at her eyes. "This is not about money. It is about her future." For a moment, the room seemed to shift in her favor. Her performance was flawless, carefully controlled, almost believable. If I had not lived through the truth, I might have questioned myself, but I knew exactly what I was looking at. And so did Daniel. He stood slowly, and in that moment, I realized something important. This was not the part where we defended ourselves. This was the part where everything would start to fall apart for her. Daniel did not rush. He let the silence stretch just long enough before asking his next question, and before the inheritance. "How often were you in contact with your daughter?" My mother hesitated for a fraction of a second. "We spoke regularly," she said. "How regularly?" Daniel asked calmly. "Weekly, monthly." "It depended on our schedules." Daniel stepped closer, holding a folder in his hand. "Mrs. Holloway, I have phone records covering the 5 years before your parents passed away." The room grew quieter. "According to these records, you called your daughter exactly 17 times in 5 years. The longest call lasted just over 4 minutes. Does that sound like regular contact to you for a moment?" Her composure slipped. "Phone records do not show the full picture," she replied quickly. "You are right," Daniel said. "Let us talk about visits." He paused deliberately. "How many times did you visit Tara during those same 5 years? At college or at her apartment?" She shifted slightly. "That is difficult to quantify. Would you say more than 5 times? More than 3? Even twice?" The silence became uncomfortable. "Please answer the question." The judge said. "Our family values independence," my mother said, her tone sharpening. "We do not rely on constant communication." Daniel nodded slightly. "Yet today, you are asking this court to remove that independence entirely." He let that sit before continuing. "You also testified that Tara makes poor financial decisions without consulting family. When exactly did she consult you before the inheritance?" "We discussed her education, her career. I am asking about finances." Daniel clarified. "Did she ever ask you for money?" "No." "Did she ever seek your advice on investments or major purchases?" "No." "So it is accurate to say she has been financially independent for years." "That is not the point." She snapped. Then what is the point? Daniel asked, his voice steady. Her face flushed beneath the carefully applied makeup. This is a large amount of money. Anyone would need guidance. Daniel's expression did not change. Let us talk about guidance, he said. He pulled out a document and handed it to her. Are you familiar with this account opened in Tara's name in March 2019? The color drained from her face. I do not know what that is. This is a credit application submitted while Tara was studying in Boston, Daniel said. Filed from your address. In your handwriting. Her hands trembled slightly. There must be a mistake. I have 14 similar documents. Daniel continued. Credit accounts, loans, applications, all in your daughter's name, all traced to you. The courtroom fell completely silent. I was helping her build credit, she said weakly. I had authority. Please present the power of attorney, Daniel replied. Another pause. It was not formal, she admitted. Daniel's voice hardened slightly. There is no such thing as informal authority in financial matters. Either you had legal permission or you committed fraud. The judge leaned forward, studying her closely now. Daniel did not stop. When did you last attempt to build a relationship with your daughter that had nothing to do with money? We have always been close, she insisted. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Then this should be easy. When is Tara's birthday? The question landed like a shock, and for the first time, she had no answer. My mother froze. For the first time, there was no control in her expression, only panic. My daughter's birthday, she repeated, her voice unsteady. It is in the spring. Daniel did not move. What date? She hesitated. I do not see how this is relevant. Your Honor, Daniel said calmly. This is a basic question. If she is genuinely concerned about her daughter, she should know when her daughter was born. Judge Hayes nodded. Answer the question. My mother's voice dropped to almost nothing. April, something. I would have to check. A quiet murmur spread through the courtroom. April 15th, Daniel said evenly. Tara's birthday is April 15th. She turned 28 today. For a moment, I felt something strange. I had not even realized it myself. In the middle of everything, I had forgotten. But she had forgotten too. And now everyone in that room knew it. Daniel's voice sharpened slightly. You do not know your daughter's birthday. You have had minimal contact with her for years. You have provided no financial support, no guidance, no involvement in her life. He paused. And yet, you are asking this court to believe you are concerned enough to take control of her entire estate. That is not true. My mother snapped. Her composure finally broke. That money should have been mine, she said, her voice rising. I am their daughter. She manipulated them. She turned them against me. The room reacted instantly, gasps, whispering. Daniel stepped back slightly, letting her speak. She isolated them. My mother continued, her words spilling out uncontrollably, filled their heads with lies, made them think I was not good enough. Her attorney tried to interrupt, but she ignored him. I am family. I am blood, she said, almost shouting now. And she gets everything while I get nothing. That is not how this is supposed to work. The judge brought his gavel down sharply. That is enough. But she kept going. Years of resentment poured out, raw and uncontrolled. Do you know what it feels like, she said, to be replaced by your own child, to spend your life trying to meet expectations, only to be overlooked? Daniel spoke quietly. Your Honor, I believe we have just heard the true motivation behind this case. Judge Hayes looked at her with clear disapproval. I agree, he said, Mrs. Holloway, you may step down. The following morning, everything felt different. The courtroom was fuller. Reporters filled the back rows. Observers whispered among themselves. Word had spread. Judge Hayes entered with a serious expression, his tone firm as he addressed the room. Before we proceed, I want to address the allegations raised yesterday, he said. Claims of identity theft and financial fraud are not minor matters. He turned toward Daniel. I want a full understanding of these claims. Daniel stood, holding several thick folders. With the court's permission, I would like to call Clara Whitmore as a witness, he said. Clara stepped forward, composed and steady. Her presence calm but unmistakably strong, and I knew, in that moment, the truth was about to be heard in a way no one could ignore. Clara Whitmore stood with quiet confidence. At 63, she carried herself like someone who had spent a lifetime managing complex responsibilities. Her voice was calm, precise, and impossible to ignore. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway began taking legal precautions approximately 3 years before their passing. She explained, they underwent regular medical evaluations to confirm their mental clarity. They consulted multiple estate attorneys to ensure their decisions would stand without question. The courtroom listened in complete silence. In their final year, they also hired a private investigator. She continued. Daniel stepped forward slightly. What was the purpose of that investigation? To document financial irregularities, Clara replied. Unauthorized credit accounts opened in Tara's name, loan applications filed without her knowledge, multiple attempts by the petitioner to access accounts using Tara's personal information. An objection came immediately, but Judge Hayes allowed her to continue. Clara did not hesitate. The investigator's report revealed more than identity misuse. It showed a pattern: financial manipulation involving not only Tara, but also several elderly individuals the petitioner had worked with in the past. A quiet tension spread across the room. Arthur Holloway recognized this pattern, Clara added. He had seen similar behavior in business. Individuals using trust and family connections to gain access to assets that did not belong to them. Her words were steady, but their impact was heavy. He was determined to protect Tara, she said. Then she paused. There was something else. Daniel gave a small nod. Please continue. In their final months, Mr. and Mrs. Holloway established what they referred to as a fraud protection protocol, Clara said. They documented not only their financial decisions, but also their interactions with family members regarding the estate. She glanced briefly in my direction. They also recorded several conversations. The courtroom shifted instantly. Recorded Judge Hayes asked. Yes, Your Honor. Clara replied. Audio recordings made with full awareness during family discussions about the estate. I felt my heart tighten. Daniel approached the bench with a small device. Miss Whitmore, can you identify this? It is one of the recordings, she confirmed. Taken during a meeting in Mr. Holloway's study, about 8 months before his passing. With the court's permission, Daniel said. We would like to play an excerpt. The judge nodded. A moment later, the room filled with a voice I knew all too well, but it was not the version she had presented in court. It was sharp, demanding. This is absurd, my mother's voice said. You cannot seriously be considering leaving everything to Tara. She is 26. What does she know about managing this level of wealth? My grandfather's voice followed. Calm and unwavering. She has demonstrated excellent judgment in every area of her life, her education, her work, her character. She is exactly the person we trust with this responsibility. A bitter laugh cut through the recording. Character, she said. She is barely part of this family. When does she visit? When does she call? There was a pause. When Margaret was ill, my grandfather replied firmly. Tara was here every weekend for 6 months. She took leave from work to help with her care. The truth hung in the air. Clear. Undeniable. And for the first time, there was no way to hide from it. The recording did not end there. My grandfather's voice remained steady. But there was a weight behind it now. She was the one who researched treatment options. He said, she coordinated with doctors. She was present. A long silence followed. Then my mother spoke again. Her tone defensive. That is different. I have my own responsibilities. My own life. Her voice hardened. But this inheritance belongs to the family. It should stay within the proper structure. Children first. Then grandchildren. That is how it is supposed to work. My grandfather did not raise his voice. Proper families make decisions based on character. He said quietly, not entitlement. The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom felt heavier than before. My mother's attorney stood immediately, objecting, claiming the audio was misleading. But the judge did not seem convinced. You have presented yourself as a concerned parent, Judge Hayes said, his tone sharp. This recording suggests something very different. There was no response. Daniel stepped forward again. Are there additional recordings, he asked? Clara nodded. Yes, several. A murmur spread through the room. With the court's permission, we would like to present 2 more excerpts, Daniel said. The judge gave a brief nod. The first recording began. My mother's voice echoed again. Irritated. Dismissive. She is wasting her education. She said. Managing other people's money instead of doing something meaningful. My grandfather responded calmly. She manages portfolios worth tens of millions. People trust her with their futures. That is responsibility. It is not the same. She insisted. Family wealth requires understanding status, connections, tradition. She treats money like numbers. She treats money with respect. My grandfather replied, that is why she deserves it. The second recording was worse. You are being manipulated, my mother said sharply. She is playing a role, positioning herself to inherit everything. My grandfather's response was immediate. No. She is the only one who showed up without expecting anything in return. She built a relationship with us. She is controlling you. My mother pressed. She is loving us. He said. There is a difference. When the audio stopped, the truth settled over the courtroom like a final verdict. My mother sat frozen. Her expression drained of color. Everything she had claimed, every carefully constructed word, had been stripped away. Judge Hayes leaned back, studying her with visible disappointment. Does your client wish to withdraw this petition, he asked. Her attorney leaned in, whispering urgently, after a long pause. He stood. No, Your Honor. It sounded weak, desperate. Judge Hayes nodded slowly. Very well. Do you have additional evidence regarding Tara's competency? Daniel did not hesitate. One more witness, he said. He turned slightly. I call Tara Dean Holloway. Every eye in the room shifted toward me, and as I stood, I realized something. This was no longer just about proving them wrong. This was about finally telling the truth. Stepping onto the witness stand felt surreal. For years, I had built my life quietly, without needing validation. Now, everything I had done, everything I was, stood under a spotlight I never asked for. Daniel kept his questions simple, clear, allowing me to speak without pressure. Tara, you inherited a significant estate 18 months ago. What have you done with it? I took a steady breath. I maintain the structure my grandparents built, I said, It was already stable and performing well. I made adjustments to diversify risk, but nothing extreme. Can you give examples? I moved part of the equity into safer bonds. I created a charitable fund aligned with my grandparents' values. I also set aside funds for property maintenance and taxes. He nodded. Any major purchases? I replaced my old car. I upgraded my apartment. But kept the investment conservative. And I continued supporting educational programs. Nothing dramatic. Nothing reckless. Just careful decisions. Tell the court about your professional background. That was the easiest part. I graduated at the top of my class from Harvard Business School. I have worked at Halstead Capital for 4 years. I currently manage portfolios for multiple high-net-worth clients. And your performance? Consistently strong. No complaints. No violations. I could feel the room listening more closely now. Daniel moved to the next point. Your mother claims you isolate yourself and avoid guidance. Is that accurate? I glanced at her briefly before answering. I worked with my grandparents' advisors. I consulted their attorney. I maintained professional relationships with people who understood their strategy. I paused. The only person I did not consult was my mother. Why? Because she had never been there. But I said it differently. She had never shown interest before, and I did not trust her intentions. The words settled heavily in the room. Daniel did not interrupt. Can you explain that? This was the moment. The truth I had carried for years. My mother left when I was 7. I said quietly. She built a life that did not include me. For over 2 decades. She treated me like someone she acknowledged occasionally, not someone she raised. I saw movement in the audience, people shifting, reacting. When my grandparents passed and left everything to me, she suddenly became interested. I met the judge's eyes. This is not concern. This is control. Daniel let the silence sit. My mother does not know basic details about my life. I continued. She did not know my birthday. She does not know my career, my achievements, or the person I have become. I reached for the folder I had prepared. I have evidence of my competence, I said. But more importantly, I believe anyone trying to take away another adult's rights should prove why that is necessary. I looked toward my mother. She has not proven she even knows me. Daniel asked one final question. If the court grants her control, what do you believe will happen? I did not hesitate. She will take everything. Legally this time, just like she has been doing illegally for years. The room went still. And do you want a relationship with her? That question hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I struggled to speak. I wanted that for most of my life. I said finally, but you cannot force someone to care, and you cannot build a relationship on control. I looked at her one last time. If she wanted to be part of my life, she had many chances. Silence followed when I stepped down. Something inside me felt lighter, not because I knew the outcome, but because I had finally said everything I needed to say. The judge returned after a short recess, his expression firm. I have reviewed the evidence, he began, and I have reached a decision. The room held its breath. This court finds that Tara Dean Holloway is fully competent to manage her assets. Relief hit me like a wave, but there is more. His tone sharpened. The evidence also shows a pattern of fraudulent activity committed by the petitioner. My mother's face drained of color. By submitting financial records, you have provided proof of your own actions. He paused. This matter will be referred for further investigation. Her attorney began writing rapidly. The petition is denied. All legal costs will be your responsibility. And then his voice hardened further. You abandoned your daughter. You played no role in building what she now has, yet you attempted to take it from her. The words landed heavily. This court finds that behavior deeply unacceptable. He stood, and just like that, it was over. People began to speak, to move, to react. But I stayed where I was, watching her. She looked smaller now, not defeated, just exposed. For a brief moment, our eyes met. I thought she might say something, but she didn't. She turned and walked away. And I realized something I had never fully understood before. Some endings are not loud. They are quiet and final. If this story resonates with you, you are not alone. Many people carry silent wounds from family, from expectations, from things never said. If you feel comfortable, share your thoughts or your story in the comments. Your voice might help someone else feel seen, understood, and a little less alone. Sometimes, healing begins simply by being heard. Looking back, I realized the most important lesson I learned was this: your worth is not defined by your family, their approval, or what they choose to give or take from you. It is built by your character, your choices, and the strength to stand up for yourself when it matters most. Greed can break even the closest bonds, but integrity will always protect what truly belongs to you. If this story spoke to you in any way, I hope you'll share your thoughts or your own experience below, because your voice matters more than you think. And if you believe in stories that inspire strength and truth, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing so together we can build a community where every story has value.